In the vast expanse of the Central Asian steppe, where the wind scours the earth and the horizon stretches endlessly, a child was born who would defy every expectation of her time. The year was 1260, a period when the Mongol Empire, the largest contiguous land empire in human history, spanned from the Pacific Ocean to the edges of Europe. It was a world dominated by warriors, by men whose lives were defined by horseback combat, relentless campaigns, and unyielding codes of honor. Into this world, a girl named Khutulun, meaning bright moon in the Mongolian tongue, entered, carrying within her not just the bloodline of greatness, but the potential to reshape the destiny of nations. Khutulun was born to Genghis Khan, a direct descendant of Genghis Khan himself, and her grandfather, Genghis Khan, held the title of the third great Khan of the Mongol Empire. From the start, Khutulun's life was intertwined with immense expectations, surrounded by 14 brothers, 14 princes who, by every tradition, would inherit power and authority. In the eyes of the Mongol aristocracy, a daughter's role was preordained: to marry strategically, to cement alliances, to live in the shadows while men wielded influence. But Khutulun was no ordinary girl, and Genghis Khan was no ordinary father. From the earliest days, Khutulun was trained alongside her brothers in the brutal disciplines of Mongol warfare. Training was not a formality, it was a crucible. Children learned to ride before they could run properly, mastering the art of balance on a horse at full gallop. They were taught to shoot arrows from the saddle, to survive on weeks of dried meat and mare's milk, and to endure hunger, cold, and exhaustion without complaint. Weakness meant death. It was a world where only the strong, the cunning, and the fearless survived. Khutulun excelled at every trial. By age 10, she could ride harder and faster than boys twice her age. By 12, she could wrestle grown men, defeating them with a combination of strength, technique, and an unyielding will. By 15, she trained with the elite warriors of her father's guard, and consistently won. But what made her exceptional wasn't merely her physical prowess. It was her instinctive understanding of combat, her strategic mind, and her capacity to inspire those around her. On the training grounds, while seasoned warriors tested themselves against her, Khutulun moved with a grace and precision that belied her years. Every throw, every maneuver, every calculated movement signaled that she was not just learning to fight, she was learning to dominate. Her brothers watched with a mixture of awe and unease. Pride swelled alongside an unspoken apprehension. This girl, their sister, might surpass them all. And perhaps, they realized, the empire itself could never be the same with Khutulun alive in it. Her reputation began spreading even within the confines of her father's domain, whispered in campfires and recounted in the mess tents of warriors. Yet, her father Kaidu recognized not just her extraordinary skill, but also her rare character. Strength alone could not build a legend. Leadership, cunning, and an unwavering commitment to one's destiny were equally vital. By the time she approached adulthood, Khutulun had made a choice that shocked the Mongol court. She would only marry on her own terms, through her own measure of worth. In a society where daughters were pawns in alliances, Khutulun declared that any suitor would need to defeat her in single combat, a wrestling match with her hand in marriage as the prize, and those who lost would owe her 10 horses. The court was stunned into silence. Wrestling, sacred to the Mongols, was a test of strength, skill, and honor. Khutulun was proposing to use it to assert not just her agency, but her equality among men, a radical act in a world dominated by patriarchal norms. The challenges began swiftly. Princes and generals arrived, each confident that strength and tradition would grant them victory. But Khutulun defeated them all. Her technique, speed, and precision rendered even the strongest men helpless. The story spread like wildfire across the steppes. Within years, she had claimed thousands of horses from defeated suitors, but the symbolic victory was far greater than the material gain. Each triumph was a statement. She was not property to be traded, nor a figure to be controlled. She was a warrior, equal to any man, destined to carve her own path. It was in this crucible of training and early challenges that Khutulun's identity as a warrior and leader was forged. She was not simply preparing for marriage or political life. She was preparing for a future where she would command armies, lead nations, and defy every expectation placed upon her gender. The Mongol Empire had never seen a woman like her, and it would never forget her. The bright moon had risen over the steppes, and it shone with the light of inevitability, brilliance, and an unbreakable spirit. Her adolescence was a continuous series of trials and victories, each contributing to the legend that would become Khutulun. In training grounds littered with fallen warriors, in arenas crowded with spectators betting on her success, she honed not only her body but her mind. She learned strategy, deception, and the subtle art of reading an opponent's intentions. She observed her father and other generals, absorbing their tactical decisions, understanding the broader scope of Mongol warfare. She learned that dominance was not merely brute force. It was anticipation, adaptability, and the ability to inspire fear and respect simultaneously. By the age of 20, Khutulun had established herself as an extraordinary force on the steppes. She had earned her place alongside her brothers not through inheritance, but through achievement, and the empire took notice. The stage was set for her to move from prodigious talent to legend. Her early life, shaped by rigorous training, relentless challenges, and unshakable determination, had prepared her not just to survive, but to conquer. In this first chapter of her life, Khutulun became the bright moon, a symbol of power, autonomy, and the possibilities of a woman who refused to be constrained by expectation. Her story, however, was only beginning. The wrestling victories and early triumphs were a prelude to something far greater. Battles would follow, not in training arenas, but across the vast Mongol steppe. Armies would kneel, generals would fear, and a girl born into the shadow of men would emerge as a figure whose influence would echo through history for centuries. In these formative years, Khutulun had learned the first and most crucial lesson of leadership, that courage, skill, and resolve can redefine destiny, even in the harshest of worlds. The sun rises over the Central Asian steppes, casting long shadows across the endless grasslands, and the empire begins to stir. But while the world wakes to routine campaigns, grazing herds, and the clamor of markets, a singular figure strides into the center of attention. Khutulun, the warrior princess, whose reputation now eclipses her family name. No longer merely the daughter of Genghis Khan, she has become a living legend. Her early victories in wrestling, the contest she demanded of would-be suitors, had created a ripple across the Mongol Empire, one that now spreads like wildfire across villages, garrisons, and the courtly halls of neighboring khans. Khutulun's wrestling contests are not merely spectacle. They're a demonstration of authority, intelligence, and control. Every challenger, every man who stepped forward thinking sheer strength could overpower her, learned the hard truth. She was not only strong but unparalleled in skill. Her victories are swift, decisive, and humiliating for the defeated. The collection of horses she accumulates grows exponentially. 10, then hundreds, then thousands. By some accounts, she claims over 10,000 horses, a fortune and a physical manifestation of her dominance. But even more than wealth, the matches cement her status as a figure to be reckoned with. The steppe has a language of its own, and Khutulun speaks it fluently. Horses, dust, the cry of warriors in motion, all are part of her vocabulary. Her victories carry meaning beyond the personal. They signal to every Mongol that she is autonomous, that she commands respect not because of her lineage alone, but because of her ability to conquer, to outperform, and to endure. Each match becomes an event of immense social significance. Camps gather for weeks. Spectators from distant territories travel for days to witness her confrontations. Even the most skeptical princes and warriors watch in awe as she dismantles their assumptions about strength, skill, and gender. Yet her legend is not built merely on physical dominance. Khutulun understands the political weight of her actions. In a fractured Mongol empire, where Kaidu Khan contends constantly with the claims of Kublai Khan and the shifting alliances of rival khanates. Her wrestling is a statement. The daughters of Khans are not passive ornaments. They are political actors. Every victory demonstrates that she is not to be sidelined, not to be traded in alliances without her consent. She reshapes expectations of what a noble woman can accomplish, asserting her agency in ways few men could. It is during these years that her reputation spreads beyond Mongolia. Word of the bright moon reaches Persia, the steppes bordering the Caspian, and the edges of the Chinese frontier. Her story is carried by merchants, soldiers, and diplomats, embroidered with awe and disbelief. A young woman who defeats hundreds of men, commands respect through strength, and wields authority without formal decree. Marco Polo's later accounts in the Travels of Marco Polo hint at this phenomenon, portraying her as Agarn, a warrior of unmatched skill, undefeated in contests of strength, and a figure whose reputation eclipses ordinary comprehension. Even in distant lands, her name evokes admiration and incredulity because her accomplishments challenge every prevailing social expectation of gender, strength, and leadership. But Khutulun's rise is not without obstacles. Every victory engenders envy, suspicion, and political tension. Princes and noble families resent her defiance of tradition. Her brothers, who should have inherited primacy, begin to perceive her as a threat. Their pride bruised, their expectations overturned. Some whisper that her victories are unnatural, that perhaps dark forces are at play, or that her father favors her unduly. Courtiers debate the implications. A woman commanding respect on the battlefield, undefeated in contests designed to measure strength, could destabilize long-standing hierarchies. Yet even as doubt and fear ripple through the court, Khutulun remains unshaken, her focus unswerving. She does not seek approval, nor does she adjust her methods to placate critics. Her strategy is clear: mastery through excellence. Skill and courage are her instruments. Reputation and influence are inevitable consequences. Her most dramatic matches occur with champions brought from distant khanates. One such contest involves a man of unparalleled size and experience, a champion whose record boasts over 500 victories, who arrives with an entourage, banners of triumph, and 100 horses for the wager. The entire court gathers to witness what could be the first defeat of the Bright Moon. Yet even he, armed with strength, experience, and confidence, is undone. Khutulun employs a mixture of physics, leverage, and tactical cunning. She manipulates momentum, exploits every misstep, and executes her signature maneuvers with precision honed over years of combat. Within seconds, she unbalances the champion, pulls him to the ground, and claims her reward. The crowd erupts. The impossible has become routine, and the legend of Khutulun grows further still. These contests serve a dual purpose. They cement her authority over male warriors, proving she can operate on equal terms with them. They also serve a subtle political purpose. Every man she defeats becomes a potential ally rather than an enemy. In the case of the champion from afar, she offers him a position in her father's army, turning a formidable opponent into a valuable asset. Through these actions, she is building not just a personal reputation, but a network of loyalty and influence that stretches across the Mongol Empire. Every victory strengthens her father's position, reinforces the stability of their khanate, and establishes her as indispensable. As her fame spreads, the nature of her influence evolves. What began as physical contests of strength and skill transforms into a platform for leadership, negotiation, and strategic insight. Her early victories lay the foundation for authority. Men who might once have dismissed a woman as incapable now follow her willingly, inspired by both fear and respect. Courtiers and generals learn that her judgment in war, in diplomacy, and in governance is to be trusted. Through her wrestling matches, Khutulun demonstrates a fundamental principle. Power is earned, skill commands loyalty, and defying expectation can become a form of authority more enduring than any title. By her mid-20s, the Bright Moon is not simply a legendary figure in tales and songs. She is a political force, a recognized authority, and a figure whose decisions shape the fate of armies and territories. Even her father, Genghis Khan, recognizes the extraordinary nature of her rise. She is a living testament to what is possible when skill, courage, and strategic brilliance converge in a single individual, irrespective of gender. And yet, she remains humble, measured, and purposeful, fully aware that her legend is only as strong as her actions and decisions on the battlefield, in council chambers, and in the hearts of those who follow her. Khutulun's story, in these years, is as much about cultural transformation as personal achievement. She is redefining what it means to be a princess, a warrior, and a leader. She is demonstrating that a woman can command armies, shape the political landscape, and wield influence on the same scale as men whose authority has been inherited or won through conventional means. In doing so, she is not only rising to legendary status, but laying the groundwork for her future role as a military commander and strategist whose campaigns will echo across history. By the end of this phase of her life, Khutulun has become more than a wrestler or a princess. She is a symbol of possibility, a living challenge to centuries of tradition, and a precursor to the military genius she will soon demonstrate on the battlefield. Her victories are not mere physical feats. They are political acts, psychological warfare, and demonstrations of strategic brilliance that anticipate the challenges she will face as the Mongol Empire plunges into further conflict. In the vast plains of the steppe, as stories of her victories travel from camp to camp, merchants to soldiers, and general to general, the Bright Moon rises higher. She is not just the daughter of Genghis Khan. She is Khutulun, a force of nature, a warrior whose legend will endure for centuries, and whose future campaigns will test the limits of leadership, courage, and strategy. The Mongol Empire has never known, and perhaps never will know again, a figure like her. By the mid-1270s, Khutulun's reputation as the undefeated wrestler of the Mongol steppe had firmly established her as a legend, but her true power was about to reveal itself, not in arenas or wrestling grounds, but on the battlefield. The Mongol Empire was a fractured realm, with competing khanates vying for dominance. Genghis Khan, her father, contended constantly with Kublai Khan, who ruled from the heart of China and claimed authority over all Mongol territories. The political landscape was perilous. Alliances shifted like sand, battles erupted unexpectedly, and the consequences of failure were death or displacement. In this turbulent environment, Kaido made a decision that would forever change the course of his daughter's life and the history of Central Asia. Khutulun, now in her mid-20s, was appointed as one of Kaido's primary military commanders. This was no ceremonial honor. She was given tactical authority over thousands of warriors, charged with leading them in actual combat, making strategic decisions, and influencing the outcomes of critical skirmishes and battles. For many of the older generals, this was unprecedented. A woman commanding Mongol forces? The very idea challenged centuries of tradition. But Kaido's decree was simple. Watch them follow her. And they did. Her first real test came during a skirmish near the Talus River. Kaido's forces were engaged with a detachment of Kublai's army, a chaotic clash of cavalry, archers, and close-quarter combat. Khutulun led a contingent of 300 horsemen with a mission to flank the enemy and create disruption in their rear lines. Almost immediately, she faced a problem. The enemy had positioned a reserve force exactly where she planned to attack, threatening to annihilate her small detachment. Many commanders might have hesitated or retreated, but Khutulun's mind worked faster than any battlefield could constrain her. She split her force. 200 riders continued the visible flanking maneuver, drawing the reserve's attention and creating the illusion of a major attack, while the remaining 100 moved even further out of sight, circling behind the enemy's position. By the time the enemy realized the deception, Khutulun had positioned her force directly behind the command unit of the enemy army. She led the charge herself, screaming the Mongol war cry with ferocity that froze the blood of all who heard it. The result was catastrophic for the enemy. Their command structure collapsed, officers were captured or killed, and chaos rippled through their ranks. From that moment, the legend of Khutulun expanded beyond personal combat into the realm of tactical genius. She demonstrated a mastery of mobility, deception, and psychological warfare, core principles of Mongol strategy, yet executed with precision and creativity that outstripped even the most experienced generals. Her ability to read terrain, anticipate enemy movements, and manipulate both her forces and the adversary's perception became her signature. She understood that war was not merely about brute force. It was a chessboard, and she was the grandmaster. Over the next 15 years, Khutulun's battlefield influence grew exponentially. She commanded forces ranging from hundreds to tens of thousands, depending on the scale of the campaign. Whether engaging in minor skirmishes or full-scale battles against formidable enemies, she consistently demonstrated strategic insight. Her campaigns were marked by rapid cavalry maneuvers, coordinated flanking attacks, and psychological disruption of enemy forces. Enemies who might have boasted superior numbers or equipment found themselves outmaneuvered, their morale shattered by the presence of a single woman who seemed to anticipate every move before it occurred. One of her most remarkable battlefield innovations was the personal capture of enemy officers. In multiple accounts, Khutulun would charge directly into enemy formations, targeting generals and high-ranking warriors. Using a combination of horsemanship and sheer physical strength, she would unseat officers from their mounts, carrying them as prisoners away from the battlefield. This tactic not only neutralized enemy leadership, but also inflicted profound psychological damage. Soldiers witnessing their commander captured by a single warrior often fled in disarray, further tipping the scales in her favor. Khutulun's genius was not limited to offense. She was equally adept at defense and protection. In one notable incident, Kaidu's army was ambushed during a retreat. The rear guard faced annihilation, and a rout seemed inevitable. Khutulun swiftly gathered approximately 2,000 horsemen and led a countercharge into the pursuing enemy, striking from multiple directions in a perfectly coordinated assault. The attackers were routed, the rear guard saved, and Khutulun cemented her reputation not only as a formidable warrior, but as a leader who would risk everything for her soldiers. The Mongols, accustomed to male commanders, began to revere her as the shield of the people. Her campaigns were not only about battlefield success, they were also instruments of political consolidation. Each engagement served to extend her father's influence, secure territories, and stabilize regions under Mongol control. Khutulun understood that the true measure of victory was not merely defeating an army in combat, but consolidating authority, ensuring loyalty among conquered or allied territories, and preserving the social and economic structures that made the Mongol Empire function. Despite her battlefield successes, Khutulun faced internal challenges as her power grew. Her extraordinary skill and accumulated influence began to unsettle her brothers and other family members, creating tension within Kaidu's own court. Whispers of resentment circulated. Could a woman truly lead? Were her victories a threat to traditional hierarchies? These tensions highlighted the paradox of Khutulun's position. Her unparalleled capability earned respect among warriors and loyalty among soldiers, yet simultaneously provoked envy and fear among those who felt their inherited status threatened. Khutulun's response to these internal challenges was both pragmatic and visionary. She did not seek to diminish her siblings, but to establish a clear command structure that emphasized merit, loyalty, and effectiveness over birthright alone. By demonstrating strategic brilliance in combat and decisiveness in command, she created a culture within her forces where competence, not gender, determined leadership. Soldiers who had once doubted her ability now followed her implicitly, trusting her judgment with their lives. Her influence also extended to the broader strategic theater of Central Asia. She studied her enemies' movements, analyzed their campaigns, and anticipated political shifts that would affect military outcomes. Khutulun's campaigns reflected a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of warfare, diplomacy, and governance. By the late 1280s, her role had expanded from battlefield commander to essential advisor in political and strategic planning, a trusted voice in decisions that could alter the fate of khanates across the Mongol Empire. Through these years of campaigns, Khutulun transformed from a celebrated wrestler into a commander whose very presence could dictate the flow of battle. Her tactics, flanking maneuvers, psychological manipulation, the capture of key leaders, and rapid mobility became hallmarks of Mongol warfare. Her soldiers were inspired not only by her victories, but by her courage, decisiveness, and willingness to share their hardships. The bright moon was no longer simply a symbol. She was the embodiment of Mongol military excellence and strategic foresight. By combining her tactical genius with political acumen, Khutulun created a dual legacy. She won battles and simultaneously shaped the structures of authority and loyalty within her father's domain. Her campaigns were more than military engagements. They were transformative events that solidified her influence and prepared her for the delicate and complex succession politics that would emerge in the years ahead. By the late 1280s, Khutulun had solidified her reputation as not only the Mongol Empire's most formidable warrior, but also one of its most astute strategic minds. Her battlefield prowess, previously demonstrated in skirmishes and large-scale engagements, had evolved into a commanding influence over the political landscape of Central Asia. Yet even as she built her legend among soldiers and conquered territories, the greatest challenge she faced was not on the battlefield. It was within the walls of her own family and the delicate politics of succession. The Mongol Empire, though vast and powerful, operated on rigid traditions, particularly regarding inheritance and leadership. By customary law, the eldest sons of a Khan were expected to inherit authority, maintaining the lineage and sustaining alliances across the Khanates. Khutulun, despite her unparalleled skill and her father Kaidu's trust, was a woman. By conventional norms, she had no claim to succession. Yet her influence, her military victories, and her strategic acumen created a new reality. She was the most capable member of the family to lead. Kaidu, recognizing her unmatched competence, began to entertain a radical idea. Could his daughter succeed him as Khan? The notion was explosive, a potential rupture of centuries of tradition. His 14 sons were incensed at the suggestion. Eldest and most ambitious among them perceived Khutulun's exceptional ability as a threat to their birthright, and the court was rife with whispers of unrest, intrigue, and conspiracy. Allies of the Khanate sent warnings, questioning whether they would honor agreements under a female ruler. Advisors argued vehemently that naming Khutulun heir could ignite civil war, destabilize their territories, and invite opportunistic attack from rival Khanates. The pressure on Kaidu was immense. Yet Khutulun's understanding of leadership extended beyond personal ambition. She saw clearly that her father's favor, while a powerful asset, also carried dangers. Her brother's resentment threatened unity. A succession crisis could dismantle decades of her father's achievements and plunge the Khanate into chaos. She faced a profound dilemma: pursue the throne and risk civil strife, or step aside for the sake of the greater good. In private councils, Khutulun confronted her father with an extraordinary act of selflessness. "You must choose one of my brothers as your heir," she told Kaidu, her voice resolute. "If you name me, the family will tear itself apart. Everything we have fought for, everything we have built, will collapse in civil war." Her words reflected not weakness, but the rarest form of wisdom. The ability to subordinate personal ambition to the welfare of the empire and the people she had sworn to protect. Kaidu, ever the shrewd observer, was momentarily taken aback. "None of them have your skills," he replied. "None have earned what you have. Why should tradition outweigh competence?" Khutulun's answer revealed the depth of her character. She valued unity and stability over titles. She understood that leadership was not merely about seizing power, but about preserving the structures and relationships that ensured the survival and prosperity of the Khanate. By advocating for a compromise candidate among her brothers, she positioned herself as both protector of the family legacy and steward of her father's empire. Months passed, and the succession question remained unresolved. Then, in 1301, Kaida's health began to fail. The long years of warfare, administration, and political tension had worn him down, and the empire now faced the imminent reality of transition. Messengers scurried across territories, brothers maneuvered to secure alliances, and the Khanate held its collective breath. It was in this moment of acute vulnerability that Khutulun demonstrated the full measure of her political genius. She gathered her brothers and proposed a solution that was at once daring and pragmatic. "Our father is dying," she said. "We can either fight each other for power, destroying all he built, or we can come together and choose a leader capable of uniting us." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. "I propose we support our brother Horus. He is not the strongest warrior, nor the greatest general, but he is wise, diplomatic, and fair. I will serve as his primary military commander, ensuring that our armies remain loyal and strong." This decision exemplified Khutulun's rare combination of foresight, humility, and strategic brilliance. By stepping aside voluntarily, she diffused what could have been a destructive succession conflict. She preserved the unity of her family, the cohesion of the army, and the stability of the Khanate. Her actions demonstrated a principle central to her leadership philosophy. True power is not always about claiming the throne. It is about shaping outcomes, guiding allies, and ensuring the survival of those you serve. Her brothers, initially suspicious, gradually recognized the wisdom of her proposal. Some were relieved, others grudgingly compliant, but ultimately they agreed. When Kaidu died shortly afterward, Horus ascended as Khan, and Khutulun assumed her role as primary military commander. She had relinquished the throne she could have claimed, but in doing so, she strengthened the empire, protected her family's legacy, and secured her continued influence over military and political affairs. Yet even with Horus as Khan, Khutulun's role was far from ceremonial. She remained the linchpin of military strategy, planning campaigns, directing forces, and maintaining the loyalty of soldiers who had fought alongside her for decades. Her influence extended beyond tactics. She shaped the empire's broader strategy, advising Horus on diplomatic negotiations, alliances, and the management of rival khanates. Her voice carried authority because it was rooted in proven competence, not mere heritage or privilege. During these years, she faced renewed pressure regarding her personal life. The court insisted she marry, produce heirs, and secure dynastic continuity. By now in her 40s, Khutulun had already spent over 2 decades defying expectations, building a legend, and consolidating political and military power. Yet she remained steadfast in her autonomy. When she finally chose a husband, it was not a prince, a champion, or a figure of prominence. She selected a loyal soldier, a man of character who would neither challenge her authority nor diminish her influence. This decision, quiet yet profoundly radical, underscored the principles that had guided her entire life: agency, merit, and independence. Khutulun's political mastery extended beyond marriage and succession. She navigated courtly intrigues, deflected attempts to undermine her authority, and turned potential adversaries into allies. Every action was calculated to preserve stability and ensure the empire's longevity. Her combination of battlefield acumen, political foresight, and personal restraint established a model of leadership that transcended gender and challenged centuries of cultural assumptions. By the end of this phase, Khutulun had proven herself not only as a warrior, but as a master of political strategy. Her ability to balance ambition with prudence, assert authority without provoking unnecessary conflict, and maintain unity among her family and soldiers demonstrated a rare genius. In preserving the empire while sacrificing personal claims to the throne, she reinforced a central truth of her leadership. The measure of greatness is not always the crown one wears, but the legacy one secures for future generations. Khutulun's story of succession and political mastery illustrates the full scope of her influence. She was a woman who defied societal norms, navigated family politics with unprecedented skill, and shaped the future of a powerful empire without ever compromising her principles. She demonstrated that leadership is defined not solely by inheritance or martial might, but by the capacity to understand complex social dynamics, anticipate consequences, and act decisively for the greater good. The Bright Moon's political genius, combined with her unmatched military prowess, ensured that her legacy would endure beyond her own lifetime. She had become not just a legend of combat, but a model of leadership whose strategies, wisdom, and foresight would influence generations. In the complex interplay of power, family, and empire, Khutulun had emerged as a figure whose actions secured both stability and prosperity, proving that true mastery lies in the ability to lead with intelligence, courage, and compassion. By the early 14th century, Khutulun had completed the extraordinary arc of her life. From a prodigious child, trained alongside her brothers, to a legendary wrestler who defeated hundreds of men, to a tactical genius commanding tens of thousands of warriors, and finally a political strategist who navigated succession crises with unparalleled wisdom, she had left an indelible mark on the Mongol Empire. Yet, perhaps the most remarkable aspect of her life was the enduring nature of her influence. Khutulun's story did not fade with her death. It reverberated through centuries, inspiring narratives, operas, and the very imagination of cultures far beyond the steppes of Central Asia. After the death of Genghis Khan, Khutulun continued to serve as primary military commander under her brother Oris, maintaining the stability of the Khanate she had helped protect. Her autonomy was nearly unprecedented. She retained command over armies, continued to lead campaigns, and exercised authority without compromise. Even in her 40s and beyond, she remained actively engaged on the battlefield, demonstrating that age, gender, or societal expectation could not diminish her influence. Her choice of a husband, a loyal soldier rather than a prince or champion, underscored her lifelong commitment to independence and pragmatic decision-making. She married on her own terms, ensuring that her personal life did not interfere with her command and that she continued to shape the destiny of the empire herself. Despite her extraordinary accomplishments, Khutulun's life was not immune to rumor and speculation. Chroniclers and later historians often struggled to reconcile her exceptional achievements with societal norms regarding women. Whispers circulated. Some accused her of poisoning her father to secure influence. Others suggested she eliminated brothers to maintain power, and still others alleged witchcraft or supernatural abilities. These rumors were never substantiated and likely arose from the inability of contemporaries and later chroniclers to comprehend a woman who could achieve what had previously been reserved for men. The persistence of such myths highlights a recurring pattern in history. Exceptional women often provoke disbelief, suspicion, and the invention of narratives that diminish their accomplishments. Yet Khutulun ignored these false accusations, focusing instead on tangible contributions. She continued to lead armies, to secure victories, and to protect her people. Her life became a model of practical heroism, actions grounded in skill, intelligence, and courage rather than in spectacle or superstition. The Bright Moon had transformed from a wrestling prodigy into a symbol of what could be achieved when talent, training, and determination were allowed to flourish unimpeded by societal constraints. Khutulun's legacy extended far beyond her lifetime. By the 13th century, Venetian traveler Marco Polo documented the Mongol Empire extensively, including the story of a warrior princess called Agarn, possibly a corruption of Khutulun's name. He described her as undefeated in wrestling, commanding armies, and exercising authority equal to any man in the empire. To European readers, her story seemed almost fantastical. A woman surpassing men in combat and leadership defied contemporary beliefs about gender and ability. Yet these accounts preserved her legacy, bridging cultures and centuries. Centuries later, Khutulun's influence would resurface in unexpected ways. In the 18th century, Italian playwright Carlo Gozzi created a theatrical work called Turandot, inspired in part by tales of the Mongol warrior princess. The play tells the story of a princess who challenges suitors with riddles, executing those who fail. Though transformed into a symbolic and fantastical narrative, the connection to Khutulun's legendary wrestling challenges is unmistakable. In the early 20th century, composer Giacomo Puccini adapted Gozzi's play into the world-famous opera Turandot. Millions of audiences worldwide experienced a fictionalized echo of Khutulun's defiance and independence, celebrating a princess who refused to submit, asserting her will through intelligence, skill, and strength.